This is Tim Fairfield, Keysight Technologies. In this video, I'm going to go over the P5500 PCI Express traffic analysis software, specifically focusing on the analyzer features. Let's look at the analyzer, some of the features. We can also go through these menus here, but essentially for analyzer setup, we have the ability to set various capture options, capture link speed. We can generally go into auto. There's the capture memory, depending on which model you have for your card. You don't always want to capture the most memory. That can take a long time and a lot of data to process. Generally, if you're clever with your triggering, you'll basically be able to use less memory and also be able to process your packets more efficiently. You can either enable or disable the scrambler, depending on what you're doing here, and a few other options here as well. When you apply, go OK. The PHY level, you can adjust some of the PHY settings here if you like. Generally, we find you don't need to do that, but there may be a reason why you have to, maybe some channel loss that you have to deal with. Again, that's on a per lane basis, so we'll leave that. We should also look at an important feature, triggering on the analyzer. So we can go into trigger and we have a lot of options here. So you can trigger on pretty much any type of packet. The other thing is you can decide where the trigger after you either fill up before the trigger and everything is captured afterwards. You could go the other way and see everything that happened before the trigger. You can leave it set in the middle. You also can store everything, including logical idles, which is not recommended. You can actually disable that and save memory, which is a good idea. And initially, you can trigger on any TLP packet. But if you want directed packets, you can kill that. You can go in and let's say we want to look at a Gen3 TLP memory read, and we can drag and drop that in there. Actually, let's open that up. Any memory read, let's say a 32-bit memory read we're looking specifically for. You can drill down and pick the specific tokens, addresses, any other features in there that you're looking for. And that will get you a trigger on that type of packet while ignoring any other events. So you can also ignore specific events and set up a multi-level trigger. If you want to get more fancy, you can get into advanced triggering, which is extremely useful when you're looking for a needle in the haystack type of issue that only comes up once in a while. And you know the conditions that can trigger that. You may have to let that run for quite a while, but this can be very good for looking for more elusive bugs. Now, in this view, we're looking at the general packet decoding. There's color coding, and these can be all changed and configured as well. You can go to switch and step through the packets and look through the packets. When you're in this view, you have the sample number, and the sample really, you'll see it's a little out of order, but generally it's either for the upstream or the downstream, depending. So if we look at the downstream directory, PCI Express downstream, we see the sample number here, and the next one in order for downstream would be 6103, and that's downstream. The counters for the transactions going upstream are different. You can also filter what you're looking at. So you can go into sample packet for PCI Express. Let's say we want to filter out and only look at specific packets. Let's say we want to only do a config request, or we want to even drill down even more, config read type 0, and then apply. It'll only show those config package. And then you may want to have any config request. Let's just put that, actually put all of them and apply. And then you'll show more of them, for instance. And then completions, we can add those in. And now you get the completions as well. If you want to just show everything, then you just action show and apply, and you'll show everything. So that's one view. There's options for compacting training sequences, and there's options for setting that compaction. If we go in here, you can also squish down based on the data versus the headers, resize columns based on their content, resize based on their header. We can go back there. We can add markers as well to do time measurements as well, different things like that. Transaction decode window. So we have different views down below as well. Transaction decode, if we go through transaction decode and press compute, say there's nothing here to start with, we can now compute that, and it'll basically compact everything down. So if we click here, we'll jump ahead to that packet. And what you can do in here, if you right click in here, visualize the transaction itself. This is basically a cluster of the read, the ACK, the completion with data, and the ACK coming back. So we can quickly find, there's the ACK here, completion with data, and so forth, and another ACK. We can show completions, we can show the ACKs, and that way we can basically look at that entire transaction. LTSM Overview, we'll come back to that actually, because I'll be able to show you a fuller one with a different saved file that I have. But let's go to Traffic Overview. Again, if you compute this, you can get, if this isn't up initially, you'll basically get a text list of the config rights. You can go then and go through and look for specific events, completion without data. There's one of, where were we? Let's click again. Yeah, 12 out of, so we can keep jumping ahead to the next one and the next one. So this allows you to step through them. If you want to see them in a chart, see where they're located. If we look at the chart, we see different columns for the time that we've captured, and we can look at NACs, we can look at config rights in this line, and here we go, config rights are in this column. If we go down here, completion with data, and we can see generally where these are. You can zoom in on those as well. Let's just zoom in on the specific transaction. I believe if you click on it, you go right to that area as well. So you want to know maybe what's going on out here. Let's go full axis, zoom full out. Let's go to one of these transactions here. So completion. So you get just a visual distribution of this. And if you want to drill down on a particular payload, you can see the information in here. We can also reconfigure that where these windows reside as well. Header, if you like to see this view on the bit level, payload, and a lane, the actual data on the lane. So just the LTSM overview. And again, we're only looking at the analyzer portion of this in this video. Analyzer config data file. Let me open analyzer config data file, power on. So let's open that up. Okay, let's get that loaded. So that's going to load up. And we'll see these are before we actually get things trained, but we can go into the LTSM overview, which is cool, and we can go through these stages. So we can go L0, we can find out where we are. So we're in L1 at this point where there are TS1s, and then we've trained to Gen 1. Again, in the first part, we can click through these different stages and see where we are in these events. If you need to recalculate this, let's process these packets and see what's going on. Okay, so after we process these packets, we can either jump to these stages, we can go to the receiver. So when we hit Gen 3 speed, for instance, we are here, Gen 3, we can see Gen 3 in the down versus the Gen 3 in the up. And of course, we can do that as well. So you can right click, you can look at last, different things like, so right clicking in here will give you some abilities as well. And if we just want to go straight to the Gen 3, we're in Gen 1 right now. We get an electrolyte order set. So we have ordered sets, and that at that point we get ordered sets as when things start to settle out. So you only want to look at downstream traffic. There's different ways to filter this out. You can do a search for something here, but a lot of these are cross-correlated. Again, that helps you out. If anything isn't showing at the time, do a compute. We have different events on this side as well. Let's load up a different one. Let's look like a injected CRC error here. So we're basically got a example of an injected CRC error. Let's do a beginning of data. So let's do a compute on that. Got this completion with data. Let's do a traffic overview. So here we go. We can jump. Oh, and we're basically have triggered on those errors, so they're already there. Let's go. There's a memory read here. Let's jump ahead to the memory read. Memory read Gen 5. So there seems to be something going on here with the unsupported request. There's an AE3 sequence number, AE3 again, but there doesn't seem to be a completion for that. And then there's another AE3 ACK. I don't see an AE3 completion. And it seems like this just got fired off and never responded after a period of time. That appears to be what's going on. But again, this is what you maybe will be using to figure out what's happening. And I think that's about it for the analyzer. So if we go to the user guide, let's go see what we have here. Using the analyzer, we have the packet view. searching for specific packets in the protocol viewers. So let's go back out and see what we can do here. Autocomplete feature. So let's go typing mem. So yes, when we start typing, so it has auto completion, so malformed, not found, for instance, but we can go back. We can see that config. Let's start typing config, read 0, type 0. Let's see the next one. So therefore, so we do have the autocomplete. You can also search on packets on basis of error types, search field. So error types. So let's go back out. So we see CRC, bad LCRC, not found. And you can also search on assertion, deassertion of the clock request signal. Compacting the display, something we didn't talk about here, but you can, when numerous trading sequences where we have TS1s, we don't want to see those all the time. You can click and compact those as well. And you can set that exactly how you need it. View captured PCI traffic statistics. So we've covered this, navigating through PCI Express. Right, so we basically can enter a number in there, a traffic overview. Of course, we've looked at that. You can customize that chart as well on distribution and that sort of things. And you can place markers within there. What else? Exploring packet types. And we can look at the visualize transactions. So the way I got in there was, let's go back to transaction decode. We have that, and if we didn't have this list, we would do a compute first. Let's say we want to roll down and see what's going on over here. We right click, visualize transaction, and there you go. It gives you all the related transactions to that group of related transactions. That's something you do fairly frequently as well. And then you could clear, yeah, exactly. So that's an overview of the interface in a nutshell. I hope you found this useful, and thank you for watching.